Okay, so in this video, I wanted to discuss how long does it take to become a Florida tax resident, right? And so this often comes up because somebody living in, let's say, New York, California, Connecticut, any other state in the U.S. that has high taxes and they're looking to get out, come to Florida, go to Texas. What do they need to do to establish Florida residency, right? Now, before you decide to leave, let's say we're going to take New York, for example, you have to ask yourself two questions, right? First is, how do I establish residency in Florida? Okay, obvious. But then secondly, and this is really important, what do I have to do to break ties with New York, or insert California if you're leaving from California? What do I need to do to break ties so they don't chase me down when I leave, right? This is the biggest issue, right? When you leave and break state tax residency with one of these high tax states, they are going to want to be certain that you actually left, okay? So it's your responsibility to move somewhere and do all the things necessary, and there's no all-inclusive list, and there's no hardline rule. It's all these qualitative things that you need to take care of to make sure that you've established residency in Florida and cut ties with California, New York, Connecticut, the list goes on, okay? So let's talk about how to establish residency in Florida. Well, it's a bit tricky in Florida, right? Because Florida doesn't actually impose any state income tax, right? The residents don't pay any state income tax. And so for those reasons, we don't have a Florida residency tax standard, okay? Now, generally speaking, you want to be in Florida for at least 6 months or more during the year. And this is a simple math equation, right? If you're in Florida more than 6 months during the year, then it means that you can't possibly be in the other state for greater than 6 months. And that's where a lot of states have their threshold set. If you spend more than 183 days a year in New York, for example, that is supposed to be a deemed New York State tax residency. So if you can prove that you're in Florida for, let's say, 8 months out of the year, then it means that just by virtue of simple math, 4 months out of the year was spent in New York, so that one factor there really helps your case. Something else you can do in Florida is to file a declaration of domicile with the clerk of court in the Florida county where you moved to, right? And so this is done for not just tax reasons, but also asset protection reasons as well, which is beyond the scope of this video. But Florida is one of the few states where they allow you to actually file a declaration of domicile, which is a good indication that, look, I'm moving to Florida. I left New York. I'm not going back, right? The other things that you can start to do are use some more Florida-based service providers. So when you move down there, get a Florida accountant, get a Florida attorney, maybe move your bank accounts down there, insurance agents, whoever you work with on a regular basis. These are all little things that you can do to start establish residency in Florida. Now, in this section here, how to break ties with that other state. This includes things that also help establish residency in Florida, right? So we're looking to break ties with the state, establish residency in Florida. What are some of those overlapping elements? Well, first, change your mailing address on any kind of correspondence to Florida. So update your records with banks, credit card companies, utility companies, the IRS. Let them know that you're now using a Florida address for everything, and that really helps to show that, yeah, I left New York. Everything's being mailed to Florida now because I live there. Relinquish your driver's license in the prior state and then get a Florida driver's license. That's a huge one, right? Get rid of that New York driver ID, get a Florida one. That'll really help. Same goes for voter registration, right? You're a Florida resident now. You should not be voting in New York. So relinquish that voter registration in New York, apply for and register to vote in Florida. Get that Florida voter ID card. Cars, right? Get those cars down to Florida, change the car registration, get Florida plates, get Florida insurance, right? You do not live in New York anymore. You live in Florida. So your home base is Florida, you got Florida tags. Purchase a house in Florida. Obviously, that's a big one. When you buy a house and you're going to use it for most of the year, that certainly indicates you're now a Florida resident. If you can sell any kind of real estate that you had in the prior state, definitely do that. Obviously, understand that that's not always the case. Perhaps you want to go back and visit maybe 1 or 2 months out of the year, that is fine. You can still have the quote vacation home in New York or in California, but you really want to make sure, again, you're counting your days, you're not remaining in that state too long, and you do all these other things to move to Florida. Now, what would be really good is if it's not going to be used for a personal vacation home, if you can rent it out. So if you got a house in New York, turn it into a rental property, right? Rent it out to third-party tenants. Can be short or long-term leases, whatever's allowed in your state and county. So Airbnb the thing, right? That really helps, right? Because now it's no longer a personal use home. It's a rental real estate investment property, okay? That's okay. Now, lastly, continue to file tax returns in that state. You're going to have to definitely file one in the year you leave, because you're going to break ties where you establish that you're a part year resident, non-year resident in that state. And then every subsequent year, I think it still is a good idea to file a non-resident return. Now, if you have state source income in New York, so let's say you have this rental property that you left behind in New York and you're generating rental income in New York, you definitely have to file them because you have New York source income, but you would file as a New York non-resident. So you file your federal tax return, you file a New York non-resident return, you report only New York source income, so you're no longer paying tax on all of your earnings from whatever source derived, because you're now a Florida resident and not a New York resident. Okay, so again, this is not an all-inclusive list. These are some of the really big ticket items that I always encourage clients to do when they want to break ties and move to Florida. And the same principles can apply to Texas or another state in the U.S. that doesn't have any state income tax. But again, make sure that you're doing the vast majority of these on the list, and there are certain other things that you could do, although they're perhaps not as popular. But I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you.